we're raising the first generation of children in history whose childhood is being shaped, not just influenced, but engineered by social media algorithms. Today, our kids are online more than ever. Actually, there's no comparison in generations with today's kids who have smartphones, social media access. They're spending a tremendous amount of time there. And we got to ask, what is this doing to our kids? Hi, this is Richard Nelson with the Commonwealth Matters. Thank you for joining us today. And we're going to tackle the topic of social media harms to minors. There's actually a bill in front of our Kentucky State Legislature right now that addresses this issue. It's passed the state house. It's currently stalling in the state Senate. Maybe some good news on the horizon, though. So, what has changed the conversation is what is being called a landmark ruling regarding social media harms to minors out of the state of New Mexico. There was a 2-year study, undercover project by New Mexico's Attorney General into social media giants like Meta, Facebook, and Instagram being their two largest platforms. Uh, they found that Meta persistently violated consumer protection laws and they failed to protect children from very real harms. A jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million for violating those laws. There's going to be another court trial. I think it's a bench trial in May that is looking at increasing these fines well beyond the $375 million. So what is particularly troubling about this case is what Mark Zuckerberg and Meta knew about the harms that were being perpetrated on young people. So, according to New Mexico's Attorney General Raul Torres, he said this: Meta executives knew that their product harmed children. They disregarded warnings from their own employees and they lied to the public about what they knew. Now, think about that. Meta employees knew that they had a product that was harmful specifically to minors, and yet they swept it under the rug. Internal documents revealed what was called the deactivation study. And the study showed that when users stopped using Facebook and Instagram for just a week, they experienced lower anxiety, less depression, reduced loneliness, and better overall mental health for the young people who were on social media. So what did the company do with the information? Well, they buried it. In another lawsuit, totally different case, according to an internal document, a Meta employee message exchange compares Instagram to drugs and slot machines. Here's a quote from one of the email exchanges. Oh my gosh, y'all, IG, that being Instagram, is like a drug. LOL, I mean all social media. We are basically pushers. Really? This is somebody on the inside who realized what they're doing and the harm that's involved and the addictive quality. And they liken themselves to drug pushers. Now, going back to the New Mexico case, an employee even raised the alarm, also raised the alarm internally and asked this: if the results, and this is regarding the deactivation study, if the results are bad and we don't publish, is it going to look like tobacco companies? Now, that comparison, friends, is hard to ignore. Some of you might recall that Big Tobacco was on trial back in the 1990s, and they denied the addictive qualities of cigarettes, the harmful health effects, and the marketing schemes used to recruit a new generation of smokers. And the courts found that major tobacco companies intentionally engineered some brands of cigarettes to enhance addiction, particularly related to nicotine delivery. So we've seen this before. And that internal communication from one Meta employee to another saying, is this like Big Tobacco? It's a very, very good analogy. So Big Tobacco, back in the 90s, they did target young people. They were found guilty in a lawsuit of trying to recruit young people. They used cartoon characters like Joe Camel to attract minors. They were marketing, again, to a new generation of users. Eventually, the Federal Trade Commission stepped in and they shut down the Joe Camel campaign. Big Tobacco had to pay a lot of money, but not before they spent a lot of money trying to confuse the issue clouding the air. And they went through the legal process. It took several years to have Big Tobacco admit that, yeah, they were doing something wrong. They were targeting kids, looking at them as mere consumers, but not as vulnerable people that should be protected. So the tactics with big social media look a little different, but they're very similar to what Big Tobacco did. Hook them young, keep them engaged, maximize profit. A lot of money's at stake, by the way. According to a 2022 study by Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health, they found that the major social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat, raked in $11 billion in marketing and advertising revenue aimed at minors. I wrote in a column recently that, commenting on this, I said that kids shouldn't be seen merely as revenue streams in any context. They're vulnerable, they're susceptible to manipulation, and they need adults to protect them until they're fully grown and until they're able to make judgments for themselves. But in the meantime, we do not target them, manipulate them, and see them as a revenue source. And that's precisely what many of these social media companies are doing. It's been argued that social media is addictive by design. It has certain features in it like infinite scrolling, autoplay, push notifications. You have buzzers on your phones, which, by the way, I turn all that stuff off. That drives me crazy when I hear bells and buzzers and notifications. These are not just conveniences to let you know something's happening. These are behavioral hooks designed to keep users coming back again and again. Have you ever seen somebody constantly taking out their phone? Well, it's usually because they've got some kind of a notification that's buzzing in their pocket, or there's a bell or a popping sound. And it's all very similar to a slot machine. If you look at the slot machines, there are reels, there's bells, there's whistles, there's buzzing, a lot going on. There's lights, flashing lights, and it's made to capture your attention. There's something addictive about that. They want to know what the next thing is. Now, what's particularly dangerous for children, friends, is that their brains are still developing. And the impact of all of this sensory information bombarding them is that it really inordinately impacts their brain development. Here's what happens when kids are addicted to social media. By the way, the average teenager in this country today is spending hours a day, depending on what study you're looking at, 3 hours, 6 hours, a huge amount of time on both social media and digital devices as well. In this addiction, the time spent on social media is not healthy, as we just said, not healthy for brain development. But it's emerging that the effects of social media use is emerging in low test scores, decreased attention spans, and overall poor mental health. It's not just the time there, but it's the content that's there. There's pornographic material, there's violent messaging and violent ideas. You got bullies there. I argue that social media platforms are a playground for bullies. They're also playgrounds for predators looking for minors. There was a private study that found that 1 out of 3 girls were solicited nude pictures of themselves. Think about that. You don't let your kids around predators. When I was young, we were told to beware of strangers. We were told to never get into a stranger's car, never take candy from a stranger. We were told in kindergarten, we were put on guard against possible predators. Well, here you've got predators that are lurking on all those social media platforms, and it's a dangerous place for our kids. Hi, Richard Nelson here. At CPC, we believe that human dignity and our rights do not come from government, but these are gifts from God that must be protected in every generation. If you agree, may I ask you what you're doing to preserve freedom? Who's fighting for your values? If you're looking for somebody to be your voice with our government, somebody you can trust to promote conservative principles, then would you consider supporting us today? Truth is, we need your help. For $25 a month, you'll receive exclusive content, monthly and quarterly newsletters, special invitations to our events, and legislative and election insights. You can go to our website below to make a donation today. Together, we can leave our children a legacy of freedom and opportunity. So join us today. Research shows, by the way, that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression. Frequent checking, sometimes 20 times or more a day, reshape how the brain responds to reward and rejection. You get a dopamine hit when you're scrolling through your social media feed, when you're looking at reels, when you're watching these videos, you're getting dopamine hits. And if you've noticed, over the last 5 or 10 years, however long these reels have been produced, they get shorter and shorter. It used to be that you could see a long-term, long-form presentation of speech or a long news clip. But now you see 30-second reels, a minute, anything over a minute is considered long, but you're seeing 30-second, maybe 15, 10-second reels. That's the attention span of people today. So this is what Claire Morrell calls neurological conditioning. And thank you for bearing with me. I know in some parts I'm getting into the weeds a bit, but bear with me. This is an important topic and a lot to consider here. So I'm going to try to hit the high points. But Claire Morrell is a tech researcher, came out with a book recently called The Tech Exit. And she talked about the dangers of social media use with minors. I'm going to read a lengthy quote. It's worth listening to here in its entirety. But Claire Morrell says that we have a severe public health crisis on our hands. America's children and teenagers are literally dying from social media. They're more depressed and anxious than ever before. New data from the CDC shows that nearly 3 in 5 teen girls felt persistent sadness in 2021, and 1 in 3 girls seriously considered attempting suicide. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that for the first time in 15 years, the mortality rate for 0 to 19-year-olds actually increased 2 years in a row. A private study found, and I just mentioned this, that nearly 1 in 3 teen girls have been approached by adults asking for nudes on social media. The presence of teens on social media presents not only a mental health concern, but also a safety concern. The problem is severe on several levels, from the design of the apps and rewiring of kids' brains to the severe mental health effects, the presence of pornographic and inappropriate content, and the predators and cyberbullies eager to exploit vulnerable children. All of this leads to a larger problem. Social media and smartphones have put our country on a trajectory towards civilizational crisis. That's a bold statement, friends, that we're on a trajectory towards civilizational crisis. Morrell continues and says, because of social media, teens today do not know how to live in the real world. We're allowing an entire generation to grow up online. They've become dopamine robots, relating to each other only behind screens. They don't know how to form real life relationships or confront and cope with real life disappointments and emotions. And screens are neutering kids' natural abilities to be imaginative and creative. We are losing what it means to be human. The stakes are high. Now, that was Clay Morrell. And as I said, she recently wrote a book called The Tech Exit. I would agree with Morrell that we do have a public health crisis on our hands. In fact, this is what the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, called for in 2024. He said we have a public health crisis, and he called for warning labels on social media platforms. Why? Because there's a very clear link to serious mental health issues among the youth. This is what the research today is bearing out. The more time our youth spend on social media platforms, the unhealthier they become mentally, the more depressed they become, the more prone to suicidal ideation they are. There are a number of negative mental health outcomes for our kids spending time on social media. So this is no longer just a parenting issue, it's a public health issue. And I would argue this is an issue for state and local governments to really state governments and federal governments, I should say, to address. And that's what happens when there is a public health crisis, a widespread public health issue, this is where government steps in. I want to go back to New Mexico's uh, landmark legal ruling in their favor, finding that Meta persistently violated consumer protection laws. And the troubling part is that Meta knew the risks to young people. They knew the mental harm to young people, and yet they continued to prioritize growth. According to a report in Time magazine back in 2017, Mark Zuckerberg, according to internal documents, reportedly set a goal for increasing teen time spent on the platform. Here's the deal. If you have a product and if you want it to grow and if you want to make more revenue, you need to continue to bring more people on board. You need to focus on that next generation. That's what Zuckerberg said. We want more teens to spend more time on the platform, more time, more engagement, more exposure, even while Zuckerberg and his team at Meta knew that there were some real dangers there lurking. They found that they could make accounts private by default. Like every kid's or anybody for that matter who's on social media, your setting would be private mode, and you could invite friends. You'd have to initiate your friends. It would not be public, not just initiating friends, but it would not be public at the outset. But their internal team warned that if they had the private by default mode for all of the social media accounts, it would reduce their growth. One estimate suggested a loss of 1.5 million teen users per month, I believe, 1.5 million less teen users per month. So for Meta, it came down to the question of protecting children or protecting engagement metrics. An internal audit here relating to the dangers that were known and the failure to protect kids. In 2022, an internal audit found that Instagram's recommendations suggested 1.4 million potentially inappropriate adults to teens in a single day. This is where Instagram, it's been revealed, had a large number of predators who were lurking, asking for inappropriate pictures, befriending young children, and then they're asking for inappropriate content, engaging in inappropriate conversations. And Instagram could have changed its recommendation system, but they didn't. They failed to do that. So it's very clear that self policing by the social media platforms has failed. This is the argument we're hearing in Frankfurt right now. The Meta has lobbyists in our state capital trying to kill a bill that would protect our young people. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we hear that companies should regulate themselves. We hear about free speech issues. We hear about smaller government. And these arguments appeal to elected officials. But does this apply to a platform like Meta, who's failed to police itself? They failed to protect children. So, going back to another example here, Instagram, as I said, has a large number of predators there, trying to connect with, in a lot of cases, most cases, I think it's young girls. They operated for years with what was considered a 17 strike policy for sexual solicitation before they'd ban accounts. That means that there'd have to be a particular user that's doing something illegal, sexual solicitation. Again, many targeted towards minors. It took 17 times before Instagram would ban that account. That went on for years. Uh, Imagine any other environment where that would be acceptable. We wouldn't put up with it. And yet, Instagram was aware of it, and they allowed that to continue for years. And it goes down to their business model. Their profit depends on attention, and attention increases with engagements. It increases with edgy material. It increases with having a maximum number of users there. So in Instagram's case, they were not incentivized to block the predators and to block those who were uh, offering sexual solicitations. So they've failed to self regulate. There are many, many more examples of well. Let's talk about the role of government. We're going to focus on Kentucky right now. House Bill 227 requires major social media platforms to block access for children 15 and younger, unless, and this is a really important part, unless a parent opts that child in. This is different than other state level legislation that's been tried. Utah, Florida, other states, I believe, have enacted legislation. And the language in Kentucky is believed to be better, where it would pass constitutional scrutiny compared to the other states. The other states have had their law legislation blocked in the courts, and it comes down with how certain things are phrasing. Kentucky has, first of all, it's 15 and younger. Other states, it's like 16 and younger. Kentucky has just required the large social media platforms that have $1 billion or more in revenue to self regulate. It requires them to identify, which they're already doing, by the way, in a very short period of time. The social media platforms know the age of the user within just so many hours of use. Kentucky's law says once you find out that you have somebody 13, 14, even a 15-year-old, you've got to block them. Unless, and here's the other part that makes this more constitutionally tenable, unless the parent opts that child in, which, by the way, parents are an important part of this conversation. Surveys show that 80% of parents favor social media restrictions. There was a study done by the Ethics and Public Policy Center and the Institute for Family Studies. Parents want to know what their children are viewing. They want to have some kind of controls over access to social media. The majority of people across the country want this. Parents play a key role, but so does the government. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are those in Frankfurt, the meta lobbyists, who are trying to confuse the issue. They've got some arguments. Look, there are two sides to every story. They've got some arguments, but I don't think their arguments hold up for the need for public protection of the exploitation of our children. Right now, it's parents are up against billion-dollar companies. They're up against these algorithms meant to addict their children. And then there's also social pressure. It's very difficult for a parent to tell their kids, hey, we're going to just ban all of it. To tell their 13, 14, 15-year-old, we're going to ban all of it when all of their peers at school are on it. And it makes it very, very difficult. All right, we've talked about the dangers to kids. Again, tons of research out there. We're going to talk about just for in the last couple minutes about why kids are a special category of our population that need protection. Look, their minds aren't fully developed. They're vulnerable to exploitation. They can be easily hurt. Their brains are developing. Their bodies and their brains are developing. So we protect them from harms. And this is what a good society does, friend. We look out for the vulnerable. We look out and we try to remove things that would harm them and hinder healthy development. That's why there are laws against tobacco, alcohol, gambling. We don't allow minors to engage in these kind of things. You got to be 21 to drink or to smoke. Gambling, by the way, in Kentucky, all you have to do is be 18 to gamble. We're working on that here at Commonwealth Policy Center. We're trying to get that increased to age 21. So why would we not restrict something? Why would we have a hands-off approach to something designed to be addictive like social media? Friends, the stakes are high. What could be more serious than the health of the next generation of children? So we very clearly have evidence of harm to our young people engaging in social media use. We have proof of corporate knowledge where they're covering up. They knew that their uh, platforms were designed to addict, designed to keep people on for a maximum amount of time. No policing over the content, no policing or very little policing over the predators on social media. We got a legal precedent now. New Mexico is the landmark ruling. There's a case out of Los Angeles where a minor that was addicted to social media was awarded $6 million for the harm that it caused her. So we've got, again, evidence of harm, proof of corporate knowledge, and a legal precedent. And now we got a bill in our Kentucky legislature, House Bill 227, protect children from social media harms. This bill actually did just get a hearing as I record yesterday. It did get a hearing. It needs 3 hearings in order for it to be voted on in the full state Senate. I'm not sure where it's going to go from here. That one hearing might be it. My hope is that it gets more, but this is something you can still contact your legislator about or leave a message for the governor. I'll give out the legislative message line in a moment, but this is where you can let your voice be heard. I often don't do this, but this is one of those issues where we've got a real issue. Something good is in our legislature that can be done to address the issue, and this is where you can lend your voice. So the legislative message line is 800-372-7181, 800-372-7181. Leave a message for your state senator and ask them to pass House Bill 227. Leave a message at the same number for Governor Andy Beshear. Ask him to support House Bill 227. Again, this is an important issue. The bill is in our legislature. Your voice makes a difference. Question is will our lawmakers respond? Friends, the childhood is too important to leave into the hands of an industry that's already shown that it cannot be trusted to protect our children. We saw it with big tobacco years ago. We're seeing it again with big social media. Good news is you can make a difference. Our legislatures got through half of the hurdle to get this bill passed. Go ahead. One more time, I'll give you that number. Call 800-372-7181 and ask your state senator to pass House Bill 227. Leave a message for the governor as well. All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Commonwealth Matters. May God bless you and enjoy your day.